let's try once more to talk about that big report, the Global Education Monitoring Report that is expected later today, showing that the world is about 50 years behind. Now, this UNESCO report is going to be launched later today, and via Skype this morning we are joined by UNESCO's Global Education Monitoring Report Director, Aaron Benavot. Mr. Benavot, good morning once again. I hope we've got you there loud and clear. We can see us. What should we expect mainly overall from this report? We understand that in some respects it's going to show that we are far behind and that the poorest countries might even be more than 50 years late in achieving certain education goals.
Well, the international community has upped the bar. For many, many years, it essentially wanted all children of primary school age to be in school. And now the new international commitments that member states agreed to at the UN last year wish that all students, all young children and adolescents should have 12 years of school, which means basically to complete both a primary cycle and a secondary cycle. And it's really because the bar has been raised that this report provides a kind of a warning of just how big of a challenge and how far we need to break with the past if we are to achieve this new set of targets of universal primary and secondary education by 2030.
Without getting into too much details, because the report is still going to be released, how far back is Africa, for instance?
Well, Africa, first of all, Africa's made a lot of progress over the last 15 years. Let's keep in mind that something in the order of about 150 million primary school age students are now attending school in sub-Saharan Africa. That's a huge achievement. It's about 80% of all the school age population in sub-Saharan Africa. But given the trends and the enormous difficulty of getting that last 10 and 20% of the population, the school age population, into school, Africa really has a hard lift here, and governments and politicians really need to rethink their policies about how they can reach those who are marginalized, who are in rural areas, a lot of poor girls. There are many vulnerable populations that really have yet to experience access to education, and efforts really need to be made to reach out to all of these marginalized populations.
Why does it matter that the world should really be focusing on driving this education agenda going forward?
Well, the report that we're launching today really makes a very strong case with the best evidence that we've been able to marshal of just how much potential there is for education to affect change. It is really a transformative driver of sustainability and sustainable development in the world. So our point is that even if countries in Africa and regions like Africa have a long way to go, that even modest progress can make a huge impact on all the other kind of international targets that have been set. For example, reducing poverty, alleviating hunger, improving income, enhancing the status of women, trying to improve the life in cities, and so on and so forth, especially with respect to issues on peace and conflict, which have had a huge impact on schooling in the African continent. So the point that this report makes is that education is a driver for change, and therefore we really need to make a strong case, improve investment, because it can have a huge impact on many other aspects of people's economic, social, and environmental environment, their lives, that is enormously important going forward.
Just finally, Mr. Benavot, for instance, here in South Africa currently we've been seeing this movement by university students from last year, #FeesMustFall, calling for free tertiary education. There's an inquiry currently going on that's been set up by the president of the country, Jacob Zuma, and we're also hearing calls for the government to cut size down and redirect those funds towards education. Now, many governments in the world, in developing world and development, speak about the importance of education. Your report will be highlighting that. Where does it seem that we are not managing? Why is it that we're managing to implement this? Is it a question of funding? Is it a lack of will where implementation is happening? Because some of these sustainable development goals for ahead of 2030 was the Millennium Development Goals were set up long ago. Where is the problem?
I think there are several different problems. One, there are enormous inequalities within countries. So when governments set forth a policy to improve education and implement it, it really doesn't reach all children. And so governments, I think, need to be very keen to make enormous effort to ensure that no one is left behind. This is really one of the key principles of the new agenda. And you need to have good data. You need to know exactly where these children are that do not have access to education and are not learning and are not completing a full cycle. Secondly, there is a dearth of funding, both domestic funding and also international aid. We estimate that there's an annual financing gap of about $39 billion per year in order to achieve just the education targets. And the international community and the donor community really need to step up and support country efforts, especially in Africa, where there's a lot of out-of-school children, in order to allow them to move forward. I think the political will is there. There are always problems in terms of implementation and corruption and many other different kinds of issues. And finally, I would say, with respect to university students, in the past, the international agencies have been very reluctant to support the expansion of higher education because it's quite expensive and relative to, let's say, primary and secondary education. But the new agenda also sees the importance of technical and vocational education, and in particular, higher education. And we believe, and we show in this report that, for example, you need higher education for a whole series of reasons. You need to develop new research, new innovative skills, green industry. Much of this can come from higher education. It's also an important investment for Africa to invest in higher education, and certainly affordable higher education that doesn't exacerbate inequalities is enormously important, so that all children can experience some higher learning through these tertiary level of institutions.
Mr. Benavot, thank you very much for your time this morning, and all the best with the release of that report. That's Aaron Benavot, the director of the Global Education Monitoring Report, GEM report by UNESCO, which is going to be released in a few hours' time across the world.